Well, Novak Djokovic is the gift that keeps on giving, or the curse, you would say, if you're Taylor Fritz, because Taylor Fritz cannot figure out how to beat Novak Djokovic. And at 38 years old, Djokovic still has the death grip. So, great match tonight from Djokovic. Vintage Djokovic, big moment serving, big moment play. And we're going to talk about what Fritz can't seem to do in order to get over the hump against Djokovic. 11-0 now is their head-to-head. So Djokovic will face Alcaraz, the buzz cut machine. Can Djokovic at 38 years old beat Alcaraz again on a hard court in 2025? We're going to break that down, break it all down, and get into it because this is the slice, and that's what we do. All right, if you're new here, thanks for being here. This is The Slice, Canadian tennis news outlet where we break down matches, tournaments, head-to-heads. We interview top pros, and we throw Canadian tennis parties like Canada House NYC, which went down at the beginning of this tournament and was incredible. We saw you in New York. Thanks for being there. Click below to get around the news and updates for the next one. But we've got semifinals set. Djokovic, Alcaraz. Mouth-watering. These are the matches that we live for. They last played at the Australian Open this year. People might forget, in the quarterfinals, and Djokovic won. Seems like a long time ago, and Alcaraz has played a lot of better tennis since then, but this is a big-time matchup, and it's fascinating. But before we get to that, Djokovic beat Fritz for the 11th time. Some people were saying nobody beats Taylor Fritz 11 times in a row, and they were wrong. And I'm not going to get super bogged down in this. I've heard sometimes I don't give a super detailed analysis of a match, and this isn't going to be one of them, but I do have a technical breakdown here because it's very simple, I think, and kind of encapsulates the big styles at the top of the pro game and why Fritz has struggled to figure out an edge versus Djokovic, even as Djokovic has gotten older and declined physically, which is undeniable. So Fritz versus Djokovic is an example of the two basic themes of tennis strategy and how they can or can't be used. You can essentially separate all tennis strategy into two categories of be the more aggressive player, play the match on your terms, and you can win like that. Or you can be the more consistent player, make less errors, let the other person beat themselves, and be the more solid player and win that way. The problem that I saw in this match, and it's kind of been the case for them over their head-to-head, is Taylor hasn't been the more aggressive player, and definitely wasn't tonight. And then he also was the less consistent player. So you can't, if you're Taylor Fritz, you can't hold back your aggression and then also be the less consistent player. That's obviously not going to work against Novak Djokovic. That works against other players. He literally said coming into this match that against other players, you can kind of play a little bit more passive and let them beat themselves. But at the top of the game, that's not going to work. He said that. And then he kind of fell into that, wasn't able to execute a game plan of using his power, which he has, a bigger serve and a bigger forehand than Djokovic. And he was caught into these rallies where he would stay back and they would trade baseline blows and he would try and do the consistency thing. And then he would end up not being the more consistent player. So you think Carlos Alcaraz versus Daniil Medvedev. At his best, Carlos Alcaraz is taking the ball to you, being aggressive, taking it in your face, hitting winners, and beating you. He's beaten Djokovic like that at Wimbledon twice. And then Daniil Medvedev beat Djokovic at the US Open and other times on hard court by being the more consistent player, having a huge serve, yes, but also just not missing, being the more consistent player and making more balls than Djokovic. Taylor Fritz fit into neither of these categories tonight. And I think that's why he lost, because the match was close. As Djokovic said at the end, it was, Djokovic won the first two sets. Then Fritz went, but the second set, Djokovic admitted that Fritz seemed like the better player there, and he had a ton of break points that he didn't convert on. And there, Djokovic felt like he was lucky to get that second set, and then Fritz won the third set, and then the fourth set, really close right until the end. Fritz saved 2 match points, which was big, got it back to deuce at 4-5, and then lost a point where I thought, had an open court, but he went for the lob over Djokovic instead, put it long, back to match point for Djokovic, and then Djokovic converts on the third match point to win. So in general, Fritz didn't have a clear enough game plan. I think he should have been more aggressive, gone for it, been braver in the big moments, and then he didn't find his best tennis in the big moments, and that's reflected in the break point conversion stats. So let's look at the stats. On your screen now is the men's draw as we have it. We've got Djokovic versus Alcaraz, and the stats here: 3 hours and 24 minutes, 6-3, 7-5, 3-6, 6-4 for Djokovic. A physical match, yes, but doesn't go Fritz's way. 63% first serves in for Djokovic, much better first serve percentage than Fritz at 56. Fritz won 82% of his serves, better first serve win rate, but only made 56% in. So he was hitting almost as many second serves as first, and then on the second serve, he was lower at 47% win rate on the second serve. Djokovic came to net more, won less percentage, but won 22 points at the net versus, why don't we look at that? Instead of a win ratio, it should be he won 22 points at the net versus 15 points at the net for Fritz. And here's the big one: 4 out of 9 break points, 1 for Djokovic, and 2 out of 13 for Fritz. So while these, the strategy topic is true, this match could have been a lot different if Fritz had broken once or twice in the second set and won that. If this goes 5 sets and it does become even more physical, it looked like Djokovic was suffering by the end of the fourth set. So I really think Fritz would have had a good chance in the fifth set, but he wasn't able to get there because Djokovic knows how to close it out and find his best tennis in the big moments. And Fritz just hasn't been able to do that against Djokovic. And you can't blame him. Like, it is the hardest thing to do potentially in tennis. Find your best game against Novak Djokovic in the biggest moments in a match versus him. But for American tennis and for Fritz, like I was saying on Twitter, the narrative has been that he's been building over the last few years to be more and more of a major threat, while Djokovic has been declining physically as he gets older, which is natural. But tonight, in a lot of ways, looked like so many of their other matches where baseline to baseline, Djokovic could hold his own. Serve return game, Djokovic has an edge. And then in the big moments, Djokovic has a serious edge. So definitely disappointing if you're Taylor Fritz. Definitely disappointing if you're an American tennis fan, because if he's, I don't think he's the biggest hope now. I think Ben Shelton's going to he will actually be the highest ranked American now. But I think going forward, Ben Shelton's going to be the biggest hope for a major title, because to be honest, the winner of this match, I think there's a very small chance that they're getting through Alcaraz, and then winning this is even a smaller chance. But beating Djokovic at a major is the first step at getting there, I think. Even though Fritz was in the final last year, he got killed by Sinner. So I think Ben Shelton is going to be the number one American hope going forward for a major. And that's that. So yeah, let's just quickly look at if there was any other stats that I didn't see. Rally stats. These aren't good. Why aren't there better stats on the US Open website? That's a great question. Okay, so that brings us to the semi-final matchup between Djokovic and Alcaraz. I'm putting in quickly the duration of the match that Djokovic just played versus Taylor Fritz, and the one that Alcaraz played against Yuri Lehechka, which lasted 1 hour and 56 minutes. So on my proprietary time on court tracker, they will have a 2-day break. So Djokovic and Alcaraz will have a 2-day break. They'll play Wednesday, Thursday off, Friday in the semifinals. But to date in the tournament, 9 minutes to Alcaraz's 9 hours and 33 minutes. So for math people out there, that's like 3.5 hours difference on court, time on court. And now since there's a 2-day break, I would normally say that probably doesn't matter that much, but Novak Djokovic is 38. Carlos Alcaraz is 22. That's definitely going to help Alcaraz, I think, being fresher. He's also played incredibly well this tournament, Alcaraz. He's looked scary, like just outright scary. Even in the match against Lehechka today, it like the shots he's hitting, it looks like he's in practice mode the whole match against an incredible player in Yuri Lehechka in the quarterfinals of the US Open. It looks like he's just slapping the ball around, having a good time. So the question really should be for a preview between Djokovic and Alcaraz at this state. And this state means from the start of the clay season until now. Alcaraz has been, in my opinion, the best player in the world. Outside of Wimbledon, he lost to Sinner in the final. Okay, Sinner beat him on a quicker surface there. That's big. Sinner's fair enough. Whoever wins this tournament between Sinner and Alcaraz is going to be number one out of this tournament. But Alcaraz, to me, on the surface like this, where it's gritty, it's not super fast, it's high bouncing, Alcaraz is the biggest test here, in my opinion. He's my pick to win the US Open. And if you're Novak Djokovic, can you hang with him, is the question, I think. Yes. Djokovic beat Alcaraz on a slipperier, quicker, hard court in Australia. And I was really impressed with that. That was an amazing performance from Djokovic. He used his serve. He used his big moment play. He just was more clutch in that match versus Alcaraz. But this really seems like he's playing a different Alcaraz this time. And it's on a different setting where I think Alcaraz has an advantage. So, yes. Quick stat. They're head-to-head. The Alcaraz has actually lost 4 of the last 5 matches. I don't think a lot of people would have thought that, and it kind of surprised me. Australian Open 2025, Djokovic wins in 4. 2 tight sets at the Paris Olympics in 2024. Carlos Alcaraz crying afterwards. 2024 Wimbledon, obviously, Alcaraz destroys Djokovic, 3 sets. Nito ATP Finals, Djokovic wins. 2023 Cincinnati, he wins. But if you kind of block these seasons of Alcaraz in your head, you look at 2025 Australian Open and Paris Olympics, that was essentially the bookend of Alcaraz's kind of lull in form. He won Wimbledon, lost at the Olympics, and that seemed to affect him for the rest of the season and into the Australian Open, and he only regained his form in the clay swing, like after Indian Wells in Miami. Carlos won Wimbledon there. Obviously, he was playing great leading up to that. They didn't play until the Nito finals after that, and this has kind of been a pattern for Alcaraz now, is he'll dip after the US Open. So he was not really playing great tennis. Nito ATP Finals 2023, Cincinnati. Do you remember that match as well? Kind of similar to the Olympics in 2024. He lost to Djokovic and it affected him for the rest of the year. So the last 4 matches that Alcaraz has lost to Djokovic, he's kind of, they were the first one in that series. There's 2 and then 2. The first one in that series was a great tight match that Djokovic beat Alcaraz, and that kind of put Alcaraz into a spin almost, into like a depression for the rest of the year. And then the next match was Alcaraz really wasn't at his best. We're not there right now. Alcaraz is at his best right now, and Djokovic is incredibly in the semifinals again. He's made the semifinals of every major this year at 38 years old, which is absolutely incredible. So, and he's really only losing to, he was injured in Australia, but then he lost to Sinner, French Open, Sinner, Wimbledon, and he'll play Alcaraz here. And I'm predicting that he'll lose to Alcaraz because it just makes sense. Alcaraz has won, I forget now, 4 majors in the last few years, or 5, and 5, sorry, and he's 22, and Djokovic has done everything. He's as Darren Cahill says, completed his career. So yes, Alcaraz has the big advantage here: physicality, almost everything. Serving, Djokovic still has an advantage, and it's a hard court, so that can have an effect. But he also had an advantage in the last 2 Wimbledons they played, and Alcaraz found a way to win those. So I think there's like a 90% chance Alcaraz is winning this match. I would love to be proven wrong, but I don't think I will be. So stats or strategies, Alcaraz, like I said, he'll try to be the aggressor, have the match played on his racket, but obviously not, make too many mistakes. What level does Alcaraz have to play at? I think for Djokovic to have a chance versus him, I think it's like a B minus. Like if Alcaraz puts in a B minus match, Djokovic can win. But if Alcaraz plays anywhere in that B plus A range, he's winning this because he's just too good right now, I think. And it makes sense. Again, 16 years older. This shouldn't even be controversial at all. But I do think Alcaraz is winning this match versus Djokovic to go to the final. And I think he's winning the whole tournament. But we'll have to wait and see because that's why they play the match. But anyways, that's a review of Fritz versus Djokovic. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. And a preview of Alcaraz versus Djokovic in the semifinals of the US Open. It's going to be juicy tomorrow morning. I can't wait. Felix versus Demon Hour. I said what I said about that. You can check it out in the quarterfinal picking video I did. But we'll see you next time here on The Slice for more coverage of the US Open 2025 presented by Canada House Tennis.